If you're looking for the top 5 most broken builds for Elden Ring right now, you came to the right place. Each of these builds were carefully crafted to provide you with a variety of options when choosing a build for endgame. This list includes a power stance greatsword build that crushes enemies and utilizes the best faith weapon in the game, a magic spellblade build that turns your weapon into a magical greatsword that obliterates anything in sight, a powerful shield build with incredible survivability and health regen capabilities, a high damage great katana build with one of the best Ashes of War, and lastly a face tank colossal weapon build that can go toe to toe with any enemy in the game. No matter which path you choose, each build will provide you with all the tools you need to crush every enemy and every boss in Elden Ring. Before we dive into these builds, I wanted to talk about the new BenQ EX321UX monitor. With a 32-inch display, 144 Hz, and a 1 millisecond response time, this monitor is easily one of the best options for console gaming right now. 1152 zone mini LED, pixel engine, and gamer experienced color are just some of the incredible features this display offers. All of my games are rich in color, have the perfect brightness level with a super fast response time, which is perfect for games like Elden Ring. If you want more info on the EX321UX 4K monitor, I'll have a link in the description below. The first build on this list is a power stance faith build that combines the devastating power of dual greatsword jump attacks with the best faith weapon in the game, the blasphemous blade. This seems to be a build I always come back to because of its high stance damage and ability to mow enemies down with the Taker's Flame weapon skill. The Raptor's Black Feathers armor that you will be wearing for this build belongs to the Assassins of Ravenmount, boosting your jump attack damage by 15%. When combined with the Claw Talisman, you'll achieve 25% extra jump attack damage, making this your strongest and most useful attack on the build. The Blasphemous Blade is the #1 weapon choice if you're looking for high damage and ability to regenerate health. This greatsword has remained the best weapon in the game for quite some time now, and it has yet to be dethroned. This sword deals fire damage, scales incredibly well with strength and faith, and has a powerful weapon skill that will destroy even the strongest enemies. In your left hand, you can equip any greatsword you like for the power stance to take effect, but I personally am going to recommend the Claymore. This greatsword deals heavy sweeping attacks and a heavy piercing thrust, making it a very versatile weapon. The added benefit of having a regular greatsword as your secondary is the ability to infuse the greatsword with any affinity you like, including Cold for frostbite buildup, Bleed for quick blood loss, or even Flame Arts for extra fire damage. Since Faith is the highest stat on this build, you'll be utilizing some of the best incantations to buff your character, including Golden Vow, Flame Grant Me Strength, and Blessing of the Erdtree. This build deserves a spot on the top 5 list because it deals high stance damage against strong enemies, has self-healing capabilities, and utilizes one of the best greatswords in the entire game. At level 150, your highest stats will be Vigor, Strength, and Faith. 60 Vigor is the soft cap for HP, giving you the ideal amount of survivability for endgame. 15 Mind is just enough for you to buff your character and use your weapon skill efficiently. To be honest, Taker's Flame is usually a last resort attack when you feel overwhelmed or even if you need to hit an enemy from range, but in most situations you'll deal enough damage to kill an enemy before ever needing to drink a flask. 20 Endurance is what you will need to equip 2 great swords, armor, and talismans before reaching a heavy equipment load. 40 strength to boost physical attack power with your greatswords, and 60 faith to boost the damage of Taker's Flame and increase your overall fire damage. The first greatsword on this build is the Blasphemous Blade. This powerful weapon is rewarded to you after defeating Rykard at the Volcano Manor in Mount Gelmir. 432 physical attack power, 337 fire attack power, C tier scaling for strength, and B tier scaling for faith with the Taker's Flame weapon skill. In your left hand, a fully upgraded claymore with the Impaling Thrust weapon skill using the Flame Art affinity. Impaling Thrust is incredible for the claymore because you can seamlessly transition from the weapon skill to a heavy attack, dealing high stance damage to enemies and adding more range overall. 311 physical attack power, 453 fire attack power, and C tier scaling for faith. Since this build only uses support incantations, any seal will work. This finger seal can be purchased from the Twin Maiden Husks at the Round Table Hold for only 800 runes. Flame Cleanse Me is the first incantation on this build. This incantation removes Scarlet Rot or poison buildup on your character. Flame Grant Me Strength increases your physical and fire damage by 20%, making your greatswords and Taker's Flame even deadlier. Golden Vow stacks on top of Flame Grant Me Strength, adding 15% extra physical attack power and 10% extra damage negation. Blessing of the Erdtree applies a buff to your character that heals you slowly over time, which can be very useful during difficult boss fights and will essentially speed up the health regen from Taker's Flame. Black Flame's Protection is the best defensive incantation in the game, providing 35% damage negation and can be stacked with the Golden Vow incantation for even more survivability. For the armor, I'm using the Black Knife Hood, the Raptor's Black Feathers chest piece, which increases jump attack damage by 15%, and the Page Trousers. The first talisman on this build is the Claw Talisman, which increases the power of jump attacks by 10%, stacking with the Raptor's Black Feathers, giving you a total of 25% extra damage to your jump attacks. The Shard of Alexander boosts the damage of weapon skills, increasing the damage of Taker's Flame by 15%. The Two-Headed Turtle Talisman, which is a new talisman from the DLC, greatly boosts stamina recovery speed, which makes it a lot easier for you to execute more attacks in quick succession, especially your jump attacks. And lastly, the Fire Scorpion Charm, which increases fire damage by 12%. For the Wondrous Physic mix, I have the Flame Shrouding Crack tier, which increases fire damage by an additional 20% for 3 minutes, and the Stone Barb Crack tier, which temporarily makes stance breaking easier. Next, we have the Royal Knight Intelligence build. This build incorporates Carrion Sword spells into your combos to help you break enemy stances and interrupt attacks. The Royal Knight's strongest attack is the Carrion Sovereignty weapon skill, which can only be obtained from the DLC. This skill is an upgraded version of the Carrion Grandeur that deals more damage and adds a follow-up attack that sweeps the area with your sword, destroying everything in your path. Any weapon will work with this skill since it scales off of intelligence, but if you want the best possible option, choose a greatsword. Greatswords offer the maximum amount of hyper armor while casting Carrion Sovereignty, which is extremely important if you want to complete your attack without being interrupted. The Claymore is one of the best greatswords in the game, thanks to its heavy piercing attacks, which are perfect for breaking enemy stances. For the most amount of damage possible on your sword, go with the Magic Affinity. This will add nearly 500 magic damage to your Claymore thanks to the intelligence scaling. The Carrion Glintblade Staff is a great option for this build since it increases the damage of Glintblade sorcery, making your Great Blade Phalanx spell do more damage. The Royal Knight build offers a simple playstyle revolved around buffing the damage of your weapon skill, which can be easily done with the right spells and talismans. Terra Magica creates a sphere below your character that increases your magic damage by 20%. When you pair this with the Shard of Alexander, the Magic Scorpion Charm, and Godfrey's Icon, you'll reach nearly 60% extra damage with Carrion Sovereignty. This build offers high damage, access to any spells of your choice, and the ability to crush enemy posture with your weapon skill, making it one of the best intelligence builds in Elden Ring. At level 150, your highest stats will be Vigor, Strength, and Intelligence. 60 Vigor is the soft cap for HP, giving you a massive amount of survivability. 20 Mind is perfect for executing your weapon skill and casting Great Blade Phalanx when needed. 20 Endurance is perfect for allowing you to reach 52 poise with your armor without having a heavy equipment load. 40 Strength for extra physical attack power with your Claymore, and 60 Intelligence, which will give you a massive amount of damage with your Carrion Sovereignty skill. The main weapon on this build is a fully upgraded Claymore with the Magic Affinity and the Carrion Sovereignty weapon skill. 297 physical attack power, 467 magic attack power, and C tier scaling for intelligence. The Claymore is very strong because it has heavy thrusting attacks, which are perfect for breaking an enemy's stance, giving you more opportunities for critical strikes, for example. In your left hand, the Carrion Glintblade Staff, which offers S tier scaling for intelligence and boosts the damage of Great Blade Phalanx by 15%. The two main spells for this build are Great Blade Phalanx and Terra Magica. Great Blade Phalanx acts as an extra line of defense to stagger enemies that get too close, giving you a longer window of time to use Carrion Sovereignty. Terra Magica forms a magical sphere under your character, boosting all magic damage by 20%, including spells and your weapon skill. For the armor, I recommend trying your best to reach 52 poise without hitting a heavy equipment load. The extra hyper armor from the greatsword is nice to have when casting Carrion Sovereignty, but it can be enhanced once you reach at least 52 poise, allowing you to receive more attacks before getting interrupted. The first talisman I'm using is the Shard of Alexander, which boosts weapon skill damage, adding 15% extra damage to Carrion Sovereignty. Next, the Magic Scorpion Charm, which increases magic damage by 12%. The Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, which enormously boosts damage negation, adding more survivability to your build so you can take more hits when casting your weapon skill. And lastly, Godfrey's Icon, which increases the damage of charged spells and attacks by 15%. In total, these talismans are adding roughly 42% extra magic damage to your build. For my Wondrous Physic mix, I'm using the Magic Shrouding Crack tier, which increases magic damage by an additional 20% for 3 minutes, and the Stone Barb Crack tier to make stance breaking easier with Carrion Sovereignty. One of the best builds you can make in Elden Ring is a proper shield build. The Blood Tax shield build provides incredible defense for your character, allowing you to absorb all damage with your shield. This is made possible by using the best shield in the game, the Fingerprint Shield. 100% physical damage negation, nearly 80% fire, magic, lightning, and holy damage negation with 86 guard boost. The effectiveness of this shield is then further increased by the Scholar Shield spell, allowing you to absorb even more damage for a short amount of time, and it only requires 12 intelligence to cast. Endurance is very important if you want to be effective with a shield. It controls your weight capacity and the size of your stamina bar, which determines how many hits you can take before an enemy breaks through your shield. This build isn't just about defense though. It combines the longest spear in the game with one of the best Ashes of War in Elden Ring called Blood Tax. This powerful weapon skill unleashes a flurry of stabs with your spear that robs enemies of their HP, giving you health back in the process. Of course, one of the benefits of using a spear with a shield is the ability to block and attack simultaneously, which can be incredibly useful against aggressive enemies or bosses. Blood Tax is great for regenerating your health bar when it gets low, and thanks to the quick attacks, you'll be able to stack blood loss incredibly fast. To make Blood Tax even stronger, you'll be doing several things. Wearing the full set of the Wise Man's armor boosts the damage of Blood Oath and Dynastic skills, increasing the damage of Blood Tax by 14% when all pieces are equipped. The Shard of Alexander increases the damage of weapon skills, adding an additional 15% damage boost to Blood Tax. And lastly, you'll be using the Lord of Blood's Exaltation, which increases attack power by 20% for 20 seconds whenever blood loss is in the vicinity. That's a 50% damage boost to your weapon skill just from the armor and talismans. This build provides a perfect balance of offense and defense, allowing you to kill everything in the game with ease. At level 150, your highest stats will be Vigor, Endurance, Strength, and Arcane. 50 Vigor is a good amount to stop at since you'll be absorbing most of the damage with your shield, allowing you to allocate those stat points elsewhere. 40 Endurance to ensure you have a hefty stamina bar for blocking enemy attacks. 50 Strength to increase your physical attack power and equip the Fingerprint Stone Shield. Also remember to have at least 12 Intelligence to cast Scholar's Shield, and 44 Arcane to help boost Blood Loss buildup. The main weapon on this build is a fully upgraded pike with the Blood Tax Ash of War using the Blood Affinity. 450 physical attack power, C tier scaling for strength, D tier scaling for arcane, with nearly 110 blood loss buildup per attack. You will also need to equip a glintstone staff in your right hand so you can apply the Scholar's Shield spell to your fingerprint shield, which will boost its damage negation even further. Any staff will work and no upgrades are required, only 12 intelligence to cast the spell. In your left hand, the best shield in the game, the Fingerprint Stone Shield. 100% physical damage negation, nearly 80% fire, magic, lightning, and holy damage negation with 85 guard boost. This shield is very heavy and requires 48 strength to wield, which is why high endurance is so important. Just don't forget to apply the no skill Ash of War to the shield so you can use Blood Tax on the spear. The full Wise Man Ansbach armor set provides a 14% damage boost to your Blood Tax skill when you have every piece equipped. You could increase your endurance more and wear heavier armor, but the extra damage buff is way more beneficial, and honestly you won't be taking too much damage with this build anyways. The first talisman on this build is the Erdtree's Favor +2, which increases HP, stamina, and equipment load, making it a perfect option for this build. The Shard of Alexander increases the damage of weapon skills, adding 15% extra damage to Blood Tax. The Two-Headed Turtle Talisman greatly boosts stamina recovery speed, which is important to help you get back into the fight quicker if an enemy breaks through your shield. And lastly, the Lord of Blood's Exaltation, which increases attack power by 20% for 20 seconds whenever blood loss is in the vicinity. For my Wondrous Physic mix, I am using the Green Burst Crystal tier, which increases stamina recovery speed even further, stacking with the Two-Headed Turtle Talisman, and the Stone Barb Crack tier, which makes stance breaking easier with your spear. This next build deserves a spot on the top 5 list thanks to its simplicity and effectiveness. Stormblade is a powerful Ash of War you can obtain early in the game, and it can be used during the entirety of your playthrough. This skill fires storm winds at your target that deal very high damage with the right items and talismans, and provides a ranged damage source for the build, which can be useful against tougher enemies. This Ash of War can be applied to a majority of the weapons in the game, but for this build, I'm going to recommend the Great Katana. This is a new weapon type introduced with the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC. Great Katanas deal high stance damage, they provide decent range, and have one of the best movesets in the game. Now, to enhance the damage of Stormblade, you'll be wearing the Divine Beast head, which increases storm damage and increases your strength and dexterity by 4 points, which is perfect since you will be using the quality affinity. Wearing the Rakshasa's chest, gloves, and greaves adds 6% more attack power to the build, making it a good option to combine with the Divine Beast head. The Enraged Divine Beast Talisman adds 10% extra damage to Stormblade. The Shard of Alexander further increases the damage of Stormblade by 15%, and the Ritual Sword Talisman adds 10% more attack power to the build, giving you 35% extra damage overall with Stormblade. For even more damage, you'll be using 2 incantations on this build. Golden Vow adds 15% extra damage to your katana and Stormblade, and Flame Grant Me Strength adds 20% extra physical attack power to your Great Katana. So many extra damage sources at your disposal. This isn't the type of build that's going to do massive amounts of damage, but the reason it ranks so high is because of its ability to consistently deal damage with Stormblade without ever having to worry about being interrupted since you're attacking from range. Stormblade also only uses 10 FP per attack, allowing you to spam the weapon skill without ever having to drink an FP flask. Overall, this build is reliable, works against every enemy, deals very high damage, and the weapon skill can be accessed early in the game. At level 150, your highest stats will be Vigor, Strength, and Dexterity. 60 Vigor for the ideal amount of HP, 15 Mind is all you need since Stormblade only requires 10 FP to cast, 40 Strength, and 50 Dexterity so you can achieve the most amount of damage possible with the quality Affinity, and 25 Faith so you can cast Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength. The main weapon on this build is a fully upgraded Great Katana with the Stormblade Ash of War using the quality Affinity. You can see here nearly 700 physical attack power, B tier scaling for both strength and dex, with 55 blood loss buildup as an extra bonus. In your left hand, you will need a seal to cast your incantations. Any seal will work, no matter the requirements, since you're only using it to buff your character. The two and only incantations you need on this build are Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength. Golden Vow adds 15% extra damage to your katana and Stormblade, and Flame Grant Me Strength adds 20% extra physical attack power to your great katana. For the armor, you'll be wearing the Divine Beast head, which increases storm damage and increases your strength and dex by 4 points, which is perfect since you're using the quality Affinity. Wearing the Rakshasa chest, gloves, and greaves adds 6% more attack power to the build, making it a great option to pair with the Divine Beast head. The first talisman on this build is the Enraged Divine Beast talisman, which adds 10% extra damage to Stormblade. The Shard of Alexander increases the damage of weapon skills further, increasing the damage of Stormblade by 15%. The Two-Headed Turtle talisman to help you recover stamina faster. And lastly, the Ritual Sword Talisman, which adds 10% more attack power to the build when your HP is at maximum. For my Wondrous Physic mix, I'm using the Thorny Crack tier, which boosts successive attack power, and the Opaline Hard tier, which increases all damage negation temporarily. The final build on today's list is the Bloodfiends Face Tank Strength build. This build makes you feel unkillable, absolutely destroys enemy posture, and stacks blood loss very quickly, making it one of the best strength builds in the entire game. The main and only weapon you need for this build is the Bloodfiend's arm, which can only be obtained from the DLC. This colossal weapon deals high physical attack power, high stance damage, and scales really well with strength and arcane, allowing you to reach nearly 200 blood loss buildup. Now, generally, bigger weapons usually have slower, more methodical attacks, which can put you at a disadvantage against aggressive enemies. This is why Endure is the best weapon skill for the Bloodfiend's arm. This Ash of War raises your poise and defense for a short amount of time, allowing you to face tank everything. This means more time to execute charged heavy attacks and less damage taken from enemies. The Bloodfiend's arm actually has a quicker charged heavy attack compared to other heavy weapons, making it the ideal choice for a strength build. The power of this weapon can be enhanced with incantations and talismans. The Axe Talisman increases the damage of charged heavy attacks by 10%, and the Lord of Blood's Exaltation increases your damage even further by 20% every time you proc blood loss on your targets. The Flame Grant Me Strength incantation adds an additional 20% physical attack power, stacking on top of Golden Vow, which adds 15% more attack power and 10% defense. This build is extremely effective even against the strongest enemies in the game, allowing you to stand right in front of their face, absorb all damage, and unleash deadly charged heavy attacks that break enemy stances and open more opportunities for critical strikes. At level 150, your highest stats will be Vigor, Strength, and Arcane. 60 Vigor, giving you a total of 1900 HP. Mind honestly isn't very important for this build, so you don't need to waste any points there. 30 Endurance, so you can carry the weapon, armor, and talismans before reaching a heavy equipment load. 52 Strength for damage scaling. 15 Faith, so you can cast Flame Grant Me Strength for more physical attack power. And 40 Arcane to help you reach 172 blood loss buildup on the Bloodfiend's arm. The main weapon on this build is a fully upgraded Bloodfiend's arm using the Endure Ash of War with the Blood Affinity. 610 physical attack power, C tier scaling for strength and arcane with 172 blood loss buildup. I also have a dagger on this build with the Golden Vow Ash of War applied to it. The Ash of War version of Golden Vow increases damage by 10% and defense by 7.5%. This dagger is strictly a utility weapon and is only used to buff your character. You will also need a seal in your left hand so you can cast any incantations. Any seal will work and it does not need to be upgraded. Golden Vow will be activated through your dagger to give you more offense and defense, but you will need a seal to cast Flame Grant Me Strength, which increases your physical attack power even further by 20%. Now, any armor set will work for this build, but I highly recommend reaching at least 52 poise for the maximum amount of protection while you're attacking. I'm using the Black Knight Helm and the Malekith chest piece, greaves, and gauntlets. The first talisman on this build is the Erdtree Favor +2. This talisman increases your health, stamina, and equipment load, which are all great bonuses to have. The Axe Talisman increases the damage of your charged heavy attacks with the Bloodfiend's arm by 10%. The Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman is crucial for this build to perform well since you will be taking plenty of hits from enemies and you want as much damage as possible. And lastly, the Lord of Blood's Exaltation, which pairs very nicely with this build, increasing your physical attack power by 20% for 20 seconds whenever blood loss is in the vicinity. For my Wondrous Physic mix, I'm using the Stone Barb Crack tier, which enhances your stance break damage, and the Opaline Hard tier, which boosts all damage negation to help increase survivability even further.